Today, we're diving into the story of a microscopic parasite that's making a huge leap. It's a type of hookworm called Ancylostoma selenicum, and it's basically flipping the script on what we thought we knew about the line between animal and human diseases.
All right, let's just think about that for a second. The sheer scale of hookworm disease is staggering. We're talking hundreds of millions of people, and for a long time the focus has been on the species that stick to humans. But the game is changing. We're now seeing a hookworm that jumps from animals to people. And it's not just causing a minor problem, it's setting itself up as a major threat to human health.
So, let's meet the parasite at the center of all this, Ancylostoma selenicum. For decades, scientists kind of wrote this one off as a parasite of dogs and cats that, only occasionally caused a little trouble in people. Well, it turns out that assumption was completely wrong. It's now being seen for what it is, a re-emerging and seriously neglected global health problem.
This table really nails down why this particular hookworm is such a big deal. See, other animal hookworms can infect us, sure, but they basically hit a dead end inside the human body. They can't fully mature, so they mostly just cause a nasty skin rash. But look at Ancylostoma selenicum. It's different. It reaches full reproductive maturity inside humans. And what does that mean? It means it can cause a long-term chronic disease and serious anemia, just like the classic human hookworms. It's a true game changer.
Okay, so to really understand our adversary, we've got to look under the hood, so to speak. Let's get a detailed profile of this parasite.
So when we look at its family tree, we see right away it's a metazoan. This isn't some single-celled protozoan. We're talking about a complex, multicellular animal. It's a type of roundworm, a nematode, and it belongs to the same family and genus as its more famous cousins, the dog and human hookworms. This tells us it's closely related to other major parasites, but it has some unique evolutionary tricks up its sleeve.
And here is one of those key differences, and it is fascinating. To feed on blood, a hookworm has to latch onto the intestinal wall. Now, the common dog hookworm uses 3 pairs of sharp teeth to bite down. But our parasite, Ancylostoma selenicum, evolved a different set of tools, a pair of big, crescent-shaped cutting plates. They act like tiny razors, slicing in to get a good grip and cause some serious blood loss.
So we know what it is, and we know what it does. But where in the world is this thing actually making a comeback? Let's trace its global journey.
The hotspots are really concentrated in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. I mean, look at this. In some rural areas of Cambodia, this one species is behind more than half of all hookworm infections. That's huge. We're seeing big numbers in Malaysia and Thailand too. And get this, it's not just an Asian problem anymore. We now have evidence that it has established a foothold in South America, with local transmission confirmed in Ecuador.
This slide really paints a picture of 2 completely different realities. On one side, you have the endemic areas, where the parasite is just constantly cycling between animals, people, and the soil. It's a local problem. But then you have a place like the Netherlands. There, it's what's called an import pathology. The disease isn't spreading locally. Instead, doctors are finding it in travelers who are coming back from those global hotspots. It's a perfect example of how global travel makes the world's health problems everyone's health problems.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the infection itself. Just how does this parasite pull off its invasion of a host?
Okay, let's trace this incredible, if a bit horrifying, life cycle. It all starts when eggs are passed in the feces of an infected host. Could be a dog, could be a person. In warm, damp soil, those eggs hatch, and the larvae grow up. The infection happens when these larvae penetrate bare skin, think about walking barefoot, or they get swallowed by accident. From there, they go on this wild journey through your bloodstream to your lungs. They actually get coughed up and then swallowed, finally landing in the small intestine, where they grow into adults and start feeding on blood.
An invasion like that definitely doesn't go unnoticed by the body. So let's look at the consequences of an infection, and, just as importantly, how doctors can figure out what's going on.
The disease really plays out in 3 acts, and each one mirrors the parasite's journey through the body. First up is the cutaneous phase, right where the larvae burrow into the skin. This causes a really intense rash called ground itch. Next, as they travel through the lungs, they can trigger a pulmonary reaction. We're talking coughing, wheezing, the works. And finally, you get the intestinal phase. This is when the adult worms are attached and feeding, leading to stomach pain, diarrhea, and the most dangerous part, chronic blood loss.
0.03 milliliters. It really doesn't sound like much, does it?
But here's the thing. That's the amount of blood lost from one single worm every single day.
Now imagine you have an infection with dozens, maybe even hundreds of worms. Day after day, that tiny amount adds up. The result is chronic iron deficiency anemia. And for kids, this is just devastating. It can lead to malnutrition, stunted growth, and it can even impair their brain development.
So how do you pinpoint the exact culprit? For years, the go-to method was just using a microscope to look for eggs in a stool sample. The big problem, as you can see here, is that the eggs of different hookworm species all kind of look the same. It's really hard to tell them apart. That's why the gold standard today is molecular, using a PCR test. It can spot the specific DNA of Ancylostoma ceylonicum. It's really the only way to be 100% sure and to get a true picture of how widespread this specific zoonotic hookworm has become.
All right, so once we've identified the enemy, how do we fight back? This is a two-pronged attack. We need both treatment and, even more important, prevention.
You know, how you treat this really depends on where you are. The World Health Organization, for its large-scale deworming programs, often recommends a single dose of a drug called albendazole. But in a clinical setting, like for a patient in the Netherlands, the guidelines might suggest a 3-day course of a different drug, mebendazole, to make absolutely sure the infection is gone. It really all comes down to context.
But let's be real. Treating infections one by one isn't the whole solution. Prevention is everything. And the steps are pretty straightforward. Wear shoes, make sure there's proper sanitation, wash your hands. But that last one, deworming our pets regularly, that points to the biggest and most important strategy of all.
And that brings us to this absolutely critical concept, the One Health approach. It's the simple but powerful idea that you can't protect people's health in a vacuum. You have to consider the health of animals and the environment that we all share. For a zoonotic disease like this one, which crosses all those boundaries, it is literally the only strategy that works.
And this is not just some nice theory. The data is there to back it up. Just look at this chart. That first bar on the left, that's human cases with no intervention. But watch what happens when you start deworming the local dog population. Even with just a quarter of them treated, the number of human cases plummets. That is One Health in action, right there on the screen.
By the way, we put this whole explainer together by doing a deep dive into the scientific literature using a Gemini deep search. And if you're a science nerd like us and you want to check out the original research, we've gathered all our sources for you. They're in the linked Notebook Elm document.
You know, the story of Ancylostoma ceylonicum is such a powerful reminder of how deeply connected our health is to the health of animals and our environment. It really makes you think, what other massive health challenges are hiding in plain sight, right at that intersection between humans, animals, and the world we share?
We would genuinely love to hear your thoughts on that question. Let us know in the comments what we should look into next. And of course, if you found this deep dive interesting, please make sure to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.